YouTube and Google Plus and watching from afar.
Well, Johnny Beck's on. What's your language?
Okay, Johnny Beck's on. All right, welcome everybody to the ID Network Gathering, weekly webinars. And my name's Lou Jensen, and I screwed up things last night, so last night's get together is tonight. And welcome to Get Together. I almost blew it again. I got on the freeway coming home from Salt Lake this evening, and I've been on the freeway for 2 hours and still couldn't get home in time. So a little bit late. I want to start out with welcome everybody that's in the film strip with me. Nick, Ron, Lance, Joni, and Jay, and Ed, all in together with me tonight, so appreciate you coming and sitting in. What we're going to do is kind of go through this slide series that I've prepared on this subject. The subject is the trade winds. And the idea of trading, to me, is quite an issue. If you take all of humanity and try and consider what was exchanged today, out of 7 billion people on this planet, every minute, every hour of every day is traded something for something. And certain cultures are pretty aggressive at trading and getting a fair deal, and other cultures have kind of, mostly from a religious, ethnic background, said, you know what, traders are bad people, so we're going to teach our kids not to trade. And America's culture as a whole, as I've studied it for 45 years and being in business, we're not very good traders as a whole. Most of us are extremely comfortable when it comes time to exchange this for this, whatever it is. We'll go around the damn moon to avoid trading, especially if there's a haggle thing to it at all. To go try and buy a car, or to buy more expensive things like a home and make those major investments, we have a broker. We have someone who gets in front of us and helps us close the deal, so to speak. And as I was in dentistry for the first half of my business career, dentists don't have to trade much very well. It's kind of a need. And everything we have that we have needs are largely quite defined. We know how much a gallon of milk costs on an ongoing basis. We know how much a gallon of gasoline costs on an ongoing basis. We need haircuts. We need our teeth fixed. We need insurance. And most of that has a kind of a price range this is kind of what it is right now, is this range. And we're aware of that. So if it's way out of range, way out of price, no deal. Well, it just won't fly. You can start a business, say, well, I'm going to sell milk, and I'm going to my milk's just way better than anybody else's milk, so I'm going to charge $80 a gallon for my milk. You can price it anywhere you want, but I don't think $80 a gallon milk is going to fly, because most of us know relatively, give or take a little, what it ought to cost and what the availability might be. So needs are quite a bit more predictable. But the want world is 100% perception. It's just what the market will bear is basically what it is. How bad does somebody want it, and what are they willing to pay for it? What's the highest point and what's the lowest point? So the range of wants is higher. But when you're playing with perception of value, it's a little easier to pursue it from the perspective of this is what it's worth and this is kind of what the value is. Went to the movie Woman in Gold. Movie's just out, and it's the painting that's considered the Mona Lisa of Austria. By the way, it's an extremely good movie. If you haven't seen it, go see it. It's really worth the bucks. Worth the price, worth the price of the ticket. And it was painted by a famous Austrian painter just before World War II. He had 5 paintings that he did, and that were famous. And the Nazis came in and stole it from the families, the Jewish families that owned it. And this young woman escaped to America just before World War II. And doing a little digging, they began to find out that she actually owned it. And the museum in Austria had it, but they didn't. They got it basically for free because it was stolen from the family. And so what happened is this young attorney, she asked him if he would help, and he started helping. And the more he got into it, the more excited he was to participate. And so they just went after one thing after another after another. It took them quite a period of time to go after this painting, but they finally got it. And the Revlon error. Revlon, wasn't it Revlon that got it? I think he paid $135 million for that painting, and it's hanging in New York now. Now, whenever I hear numbers like this, and I've been playing with it all day today, I've been up to see my longtime friend and patron, my number one relationship in the trading side of my life for over 35 years has been Jack. And I've been up with him, and his book that I put together now is all of his fancy things in his life. And we've been pals for a very long time, and he has a lot of really, really rare artwork pieces. And then he owns the largest collection of brilliant cut crystal in the world. He's got 250 pieces in this room alone. Is worth about $12 million, just the cut glass in this room. Then he's got all of his stuff is presented in these really rare, it's called boule furniture. It's copies of the stuff made for King Louis XIV in France. And then these are some of his hand-cut crystal pieces. He's paid as much as $50,000 just for a punch bowl. And so he asked me to put this booklet together because I've been kind of alongside the collection for about 35 years. I helped him move from Vegas up here to Salt Lake to hide away. This is a 4-foot square mother of pearl copy of the Dome of the Rock Temple, the mosque in Jerusalem. And there's only 2 of these in the world. The King of Saudi Arabia owns one, and Jack has the other. And then this is his big office. This is where he does all of his major business deals and entertaining is in this great big office that he's built. And several pieces of my things are right there on that desk. That's one of mine right there. So we're trying to estimate. My job in this is to present it at the highest level of perceived value that I can come up with. And we have just, it has about driven me crazy. I like doing it, but Jacob's pretty fussy, and it's been really hard to please him. And it's my job to stretch the perception of the value of that collection to where its highest possible mark, and we're shooting at $40 million. But several of his things are priceless already. I mean, I don't know how you put a price tag on some of this stuff. And so I told him, I says, well, I'm going to set the highest mark and shove it as close to priceless as I can, because artificial intelligence and robotics are coming like a fast freight train, and before long, all the smart machines will overpower any hand-producing artist's ability to compete anymore. It's just production-wise, quality-wise, everything, cost-wise, you're just, as a hand-producing artist, you're going to have a hell of a time competing with some robot in China that can copy you no matter what you do. And it's hit a lot of American artistry already, and artists always are the starving artist category. I mean, most artists starve because they're not very good in the business side of things anyway. And when it's all perception of art that they're wrestling with and struggling with, it's really challenging to figure out what should something be worth and who would buy it and for how much. Now, Jack says, my job is to keep it all together, keep the collection together. He's 84 now, so who knows how things are going to go. And we wrestle with this for at least the last 10 years. Every time we get together, it's how in the hell is this going to work? If you've been watching Fox television every Sunday night, they do this show about strange inheritance, weird inheritance. And this one guy had collected so damn many John Deere tractors, it was unbelievable, and he died. Another guy had a whole bunch of cars. One had a Stradivarius Viola, really, really rare Viola, just a little bit ago. And families who inherit this stuff go into really difficult turf as to what to do with it. How do we manage, and how much is it really worth, and who might buy it? The one they had was just fascinating. This guy had collected baseball cards, and he had one of the most pristine collections of original baseball cards ever, and I forget how many millions it sold for, but the family lined everything up and had a professional broker get involved with them, and eventually they got this much money instead of this much money for that collection. So the marketing and basically closing of a business deal of things that people want is all perception of value. And all the subtle little things that change that perception of value are the issues that you play with. And then if you split the economy, I do this every time, you got the top half of the economy and the bottom half of the economy. Top half of the economy can afford everything they need and most of what they want. The bottom half can't barely afford what they need, much less much of what they want. But at the very peak up here is this little tiny group of people, this little 10% chunk of humanity in the United States especially, and it's even a higher number in the rest of the world. Those very few people control 70% of this nation's wealth. The remaining pile of us, okay, the remaining 90% of us live on 1/3 of the value, and we all do pretty well. Now I hear there's not an hour of any day anymore that doesn't come into the news and into the media and into politics that group of people don't deserve all that they have. They're robber barons and they're CEOs and there's just this huge litany of issues that everybody's throwing rocks at the rich because they've got all this much, so much, and the rest of us have whatever, on down through the poor. And we could argue the political stance of that for the next 13 years and probably not get anywhere. So I don't want to tackle that issue so much tonight, other than the fact that I've always felt like it kind of is what it is. And I don't think an individual is going to change that. Maybe the United States can get a handle on it and level the playing field somehow, but I don't see how, mostly because it's perception of value. And everyone says, well, I want it changed. Well, if you were one of the ones that had all that stock or inherited all that property or that business or whatever, then hell, you're not going to back off what you've owned and what you've inherited. And I don't see how, unless it is legislated, that they're going to be able to take it from the rich and give it down here to the poor. My one theory is that couldn't we just give every American in the country $1 million? $300 million is all that would take. Give every single American $1 million. Now, if you sit down and try and reason out what might happen to the economy if nobody had to work anymore?
It'd go in the tank.
It would go in the tank. It's my theory too. They had a guy on the news yesterday. Maybe you saw it on Fox News. Oh, he's all over the news. He owns a credit card processing company in Seattle, I think it is. And he's got 120 employees, and he's decided the minimum wage at his little company is going to now be $70,000. No matter what.
Salary.
Everybody's going to get 70 grand. And he's decided that's the answer. He heard somewhere that if you made $70,000 a year, you'd be really happy. And anything less than $70,000 a year, you're poor and unhappy. But 70,000 is the magic number, so that's what he decided to do. He's cutting his own wage, 98% something, all his money he makes normally, in order to do this for everybody across the board. But talk about a gutsy move. I mean, most of us who own a business and tried to keep it in the air for the last umpteen years, I don't think we could dare make that kind of a shot. I don't know his numbers, but he's got to have some ungodly margins in his product in order to even think about doing that. So it's going to be real interesting to see how it actually turns out and what's going to go on for him. Mel, could you roll your mic off?
Yeah.
We get a lot of feedback. Thank you. So as I start into this presentation tonight now, what I'm hoping you'll do is kind of thoughtfully think through. When I left dentistry, I'm trying to figure out how to make my hobby business work. And I kind of told myself, unless my hobby business can outproduce my dental income, I can't quit. And to me, that ought to be the line in the sand for every human being out there. It's not smart to go after building your own business without a base of income under your life. Either an inheritance or retirement check or a job. And you do the job over here to pay the bills and keep your life steady, and then start this enterprise hobby business over here. That way you can live on this income and wait till the income from the sales of the hobby business begin to respond enough that then you can actually move from one income to the next and not even blink. A very safe way to start and get into business. But unless you've done it before, unless you've actually done a business, and I was in the need world, dentists don't have to even pay attention to this. There's so much demand, and it's all legalized and all controlled. MDs and dentists and all these professional kind of careers have got a lock on it that's been evolving now for 50 or 100 years. And so there really is no way to end run that. And if you're going to have it fixed, then the prices are pretty well. I mean, you can go, I think you go nationwide and say, how much does it cost to get my kids' wisdom teeth out? And I'll bet the cost price tag is within $200 per patient all across this country. I can't imagine it being too far out of whack because it's a need. And it doesn't take very long to kind of check and see between doctors, surgeons, who charges what, except for the really expensive stuff. You're going to go have a heart transplant done, then things get just crazy. But otherwise, it still kind of evolves into this standardization of this is the fee, and this is the price tag. I always tell in this show, one of the first people I'm going to go look for in the next life is I want to know who invented money. It's the most fascinating thing to me because up to that time, goods and services were traded directly. You traded food for clothes and implements for food, and it was a direct trade at the tree in the town square every Wednesday. We brought goods and services together and bartered, and the bartering was how it was done. And that evolution is for however long mankind has existed in a social entity. But at some point, some smart son of a gun said, you know what? We're going to invent money, and all I got to do is then put the price tag up here because people hate to trade so much. I'll just put the price tag on it, and then the only decision I have to make is whether to pay for it or whether not. And it eliminated or softened this bartering battle zone of, well, I don't think it's worth that. It was the most startling time in my dental career when I started as a dentist. My brother and I both practiced together for 15 years and lived in rural America, and I would have the damnedest trades for dental work. You can't even imagine what people would offer to pay me with to trade. It was hilarious because they had this And Doc, I'll give you that for this dental bill or to get my teeth fixed or whatever. And it was always a nightmare because how do you value and measure a truckload of firewood? I don't even need firewood, but I want to trade you a truckload of firewood, Doc, for to have this tooth fixed. And so then it was this constant battle over, I'm going to charge $135 for this, and he wants to trade that truckload of firewood for that $135. And man, that's a hard thing to know. Is that worth it or is it not? And that's where this trading battle zone gets set up every time, where most of us would rather not wrestle with trading. We will just literally not trade rather than get caught in this bartering. Is it worth this or is it not? What are we really trading? And the fact there's a price tag on it, and the fact that there's some value established and in the marketplace and some historical precedent helps make it work a little better. But it's a little better. Don't you, every time you go through the grocery store, you look at what you're looking for, and most of humanity, wherever you are in this scale, most of us have to look at the price tag. And we immediately say, yeah, that's worth it, or no, that's not worth it. We make that judgment call. And so Wally's puts the price tag on there and hopes like hell how it's priced and presented will seduce you into actually go ahead and say, oh, yep, that's good, that's reasonable, those are good steaks, I'll get them. And yet, there's not a lot of latitude. You can't take a T-bone steak and shove a, well, you can. Now, this is the exception. You put a price tag of $80 on a T-bone steak, most people will object. But Jack just took me to Ruth's Chris Steakhouse in Park City. We were celebrating. And he, come on, Lou, I'll take you to Ruth's Chris. And it was a $100 tab pretty damn fast that night. And all it was a chunk of steak and a few other little goodies thrown in and lots of ambience. Okay, you walk in there, you know it's expensive. And they spend more time worrying on perception than they almost do. Oh, that was good. No question. It was as good a steak as I've ever had. But it was still, they're trying to stretch the perception of the value clear up here when you can go to Walmart and get a steak for a really good steak for $20. So figuring out when it's a want is where this grief lies. This is where this trading mechanism gets really muddy and really difficult. And I always feel like, okay, if it's a human nature concept and it's so prevalent in life, you don't get what you deserve, you get what you can trade, don't you? I think that's how it lands. If you're a lousy trader, you're going to get short-changed damn near every time. And the producer of things is the trader. I've taught you in the other classes when we were doing the branding and the upscale marketing and the pricing. The producer is the one that has to control all these perception circumstances in order to get the price they want and actually close the deal. And if you're lousy at trading and lousy at understanding that, everything is somewhat of a trade. Everything. Even if you don't see it, even if you don't realize and recognize what's going on, there's a trade going on all the time with everything, with everybody. And when I'd get with Jack and Woody, they were my mentors. They were the ones that helped me basically escape dentistry. And both of them were major successful because they were good traders. You'd pay hell beating Jack or Woody, either one, in a trade. I don't care how seasoned you think you are or how capable of trader you think you are. Those two are extraordinary at it and have ended up with millions in their life rather than the other way around. Now, all of humanity has all these reasons that that's a bad thing. In our little area, Woody was a big fish in a little pond. and everybody knew of him. Very few people knew that I knew him as well as I did. I'm the new young dentist in town, and I'm into this and into this and into this, and doing every damn thing I could do to be rich. And I got in a building subdivision, 40-acre subdivision I was developing, and I got in all kinds of financial troubles with it. And I had about $500,000 worth of debt out there, and I couldn't figure out how to maneuver things to solve the problem, because that was, the bank was going to call on it, and I was going to lose all the equity, and they just walk away with 3/4 of my life for nothing. And I couldn't figure out how to fix the problem. And right then's when Woody showed up in my life. His wife was a patient of mine, and Vanessa says, "I think, Doc, you ought to go talk to Woody. He's pretty good at this kind of stuff." And so I went up one night and met with him, and he looked over my life, and he says, "My God, Jensen," he says, "what the hell are you doing?" He says, "You got, in the West we call this bass backwards. You got the cart before the damn horse." He says, "It isn't ever going to work well for you unless you rearrange things here." And the next morning I went up to have breakfast with him, and he made one phone call, and in 5 minutes solved the $500,000 problem over the phone. You have to go in and sign papers, fill out, do all the rest of us all have to do all this stuff. He just made the phone call, and it was done that quick. And I went, my God, there's some other things going on here in the world that I don't, I know how to fix a tooth and solve a root canal, but I don't know anything about what Woody was playing with. And so both of them have kind of been tutors. They've been kind of teachers. Even today, Jack was lecturing me on this perception of value thing. And so as we start into this, what I've tried to get in the Yanni Network for 8 years now is for all of you to just realize that you're probably not the best trader on the planet. I mean, we could get into this, and there's a huge range here. I apologize because I don't want to offend anybody. But some would do a pretty good job of trading because you don't mind it. You're willing to sit down and say, hey, this isn't acceptable. I need better terms. I need different circumstances. I need more quality. I need more volume, whatever. And some of you have grown up with that, and you're somewhat okay with it. But a lot of people that I've crossed paths with and that aren't in business, the only trade they really make is a 40-hour work week and the paycheck they get for that 40 hours. And they're not even very good at that trade because it's just basically what the company's willing to hand down to you. And most are not very good at upping the value, upping the ante. How come I could get paid more? And I think the young man in Seattle is going to give everybody $70,000. His first nightmare is going to be, this guy does all the work, and this guy sits on his butt and doesn't do anything, and you're going to pay them both 70? Pay them both the same amount? Yeah, that ain't going to last very damn long. And I go, the free market is actually quite a good way with dealing with most of these kinds of problems. And I think Tammy would admit it as well. Out of our 35 years as a company, #1 issue has been employee wages and employee compensation the entire time. It's the most difficult thing to say how much is somebody worth and make that stick and make it work. It's the trade of all trades in my book. It's the number one nemesis in all of business. So as we start into this, just tell yourself that you probably need to sharpen your trading skills a little. And then remind me, I got my crystal here. I want to show you some of the pieces that I've just finished for the university. And okay, come on up here just a tiny bit more. Trade wins, we got that up, Mel?
Yeah, session 51.
51, good. I built this show out of my own curiosity and my own interest because from January through the first half of the year, I present my webinars of the subjects that I think made the biggest difference in my own personal life as I moved from a need world job business of dentistry to my hobby business, which was first Paragrave, then we changed it to Paragraphics when we put sandblasting in, pulled airbrushing in, and then we turned it into Profitable Hobbies for the internet web-based stuff, which Tammy owns and runs now. And when you look at the whole overall position and what we've done in 38 years now, if you succeed at all, you begin to get an attitude about how it works. And this subject is the toughest one. This is the one that I think most people really, really have a hard time with. At the time I started this show, I was presenting Joe Cummings, and he got an email from Holland, and Joe's one of our masters, has been doing gun stock carving, and he got an email from Holland, for crying out loud. They'd found him on the web and wanted him to quote a price tag of something they wanted custom cut and custom carved. And then I had to do a special gift box for the university. And they were trying to get me to do it for almost nothing, except they wanted all this time and energy and effort and exoticness put into the gift box. And so these kind of examples that come in to Tammy now mostly are phone calls of saying, oh my help, I'm in trouble. I don't know what to do with an email from Holland. How do I begin to do business on an international basis? Or how can I trade this gift box? Where's this price tag going to end up being? And all of you that are in the show with me tonight, you're all old members, you've been around a long time. You know that one of the greatest things you can do is get on the phone and talk to Mel or Ron or Johnny or somebody, visit with each other, members of their masters, and have a little bit of a soundboard as to what maybe you ought to do. I call it what you ought to do. And that kind of coaching and counseling is just so freaking helpful. This cartoon I've had in my life in my journal for a very long time, because sometimes the damn dragon wins. And the first time I saw it, I still remember, I laughed for 10 minutes because everyone always brags about how good things work, but not always do they work well. And sometimes it's just nothing but body armor laying all over the battlefield because there's just no way to get around it. I always dedicate this to Woody and his wife Onetta. This is, we were up on their ranch. He owned the whole mountain. He owned Diamond Mountain, 12,000-acre ranch, and world champion cutting horses, and anything in our area that wasn't worth owning, Woody owned. Or he owned everything else, all the good stuff. And he grew up in 5 little boys. His dad was killed by lightning. Grew up under very poverty-stricken circumstances and yet ended up owning half the damn world. And I think it's because he knew and learned human nature. Human nature is what is likely to happen. And every time I would have coaching and mentoring sessions, I spent a lot of time with Woody and Jack both. Tammy knows how much time I've invested and was allowed to be in these two people's lives aggressively so. And that information, that training, almost always our discussions and our visits are about human nature. Why do people do largely what they do? What is human motivation? What's making things work? And when Woody started to help me see that this was a living over here with dentistry, but what I was really after was the control of my personal time. And you've heard it from me for I don't know how long. Anybody that really has a great lifestyle has largely the control of their personal time. And if you can control and grow in that direction, then the odds are you'll gradually get to a point where you're really kind of having a lifestyle that most people dream of. Woody was a horse nut, and he had his beautiful horses, but he made his living on everything else. The horses were the plaything. But I stood right next to him one day when he turned down $750,000 for a pony, and I could have died. I couldn't even believe what I was hearing, because the guy offered him $750,000 cash, and Woody said no. Good Lord, I had never heard of such a thing in my entire life. I had no idea what some horse flesh is worth. And I just, these early moments with Woody were so profound because I was so far off. I grew up relatively poor. And your perspective of perception of value is just so far off, it's just scary. And in these years of playing with what I've tried to play with, I feel like I have a secret weapon. And I share it at this point in my life, and it's a little bit scary because I'm kind of a nutcase. And all of you that know me well know Lou's quite crazy. But I have had, since I was a little boy, a mental menagerie of invented friends in my life like Walt Disney had in his life. But mine are called the Imagination Committee, and there's 7 of them. Sparky and Flash, Gazer and Zing, and Schaefer, Sketch and Tie. These are my creative pals. And I invented them over a long period of time, from 7 years on up. And Sparky's the spark of imagination, and Flash is intuition. Each one of them have a role in the creative process. And so when I'm considering things like perception of value and human nature, I literally can bounce it off in my mind. I call it ricochet thinking. It's just literally, I've done it enough now, and I'm comfortable enough with it that I can really get some weird perspectives by doing it that way. We were laughing about it Saturday. Tammy had her retreat over at the home studio, and once a month she gathers. The artists can come and spend it Saturday and play at the studio together and visit, and we all go to lunch. And somehow the subject of the Imagination Committee came up again, and I was talking about it a little bit, and somebody says, "Yeah, Lou, there's a title for that particular thing in life when you got voices in your head. It's called schizophrenia." So I probably am. I'm definitely crazy. But if how you get along in life is one trade after another, and yet all you do is pick up a paycheck every Friday, and you don't have to haggle much over too many of the trades. It seems to me the growing old process is to eliminate trades, not more, less. I don't want to have to think that much. I don't want to have to dicker. I don't want to have to consider whether I should get a raise or not. I don't want to consider whether that car is really worth that much or not. Most people will go clear to the end of the moon to avoid trading, period. Okay? And in my years of being in business now, almost 40 years, I've had so many people counsel me and help me to kind of understand how this trading process works. There is no way for me to thank Woody and Jack, no way for me to thank Tammy and Keith, and all our masters are once people who focused and excelled at trying. Not that we've got it all figured out by any means, but at least we're trying. And the more you can look for and find something that you really enjoy and that feels worthwhile, it will never feel like work, and you'll literally get paid to play. That's such a worthy goal to me. How can you grow old and not have it any better than this? I don't think you really can. And yet, as you fish, I used marketing as a fishing example, but marketing is a bit of a trading process. And it's an uphill climb. It isn't easy. But I got to figure out how I can catch as much value as I can for that fishing, working, trading effort. And I use these subjects to teach myself and to keep myself in the game as much as I can, and then I share what I've learned. To me, people who succeed, last night I was reading on the web, a guy posted up the 7 unique things that make someone more likely an entrepreneur. And that's all I've done. I mean, entrepreneur is the greatest business risk there is. It's all I've done now for 40 years, and I got a fairly good handle on it. Only 3 out of 100 businesses succeed. Only 3 ongoing successful businesses out of 100 people. 3 people can do it, 97 have a paycheck and a job. And I'm going to bring that into my next shows because I think it's so fun to kind of measure it, look at it. The one he left out is what I think is the great one I'm going to talk about here in a minute. If you're not paying attention to the trading process going on in your lives, the odds of you succeeding is very slim. You have to know and sense. It's up to you in the trading position to know if you're being had or not. Is it an okay trade that's going on? We're laughing right now because we got to go Saturday to back home, and my brother-in-law Chris is meeting down with his family, and they're going to settle a family estate Saturday, supposedly. And they got 10 acres in a house, and they're trying to figure out what the hell to do with it now. And the family has got a split decision between 4 people. And if you're going to get into a trust ever, do not have 2, 4, 6 people. It's just crazy insane to have a split vote, because it will always go to that. It's got to be 1, 3, 5. Don't ever get caught putting a trust in a 2, 4 vote decision. And that's this family. The 1 sister and 3 brothers have now got to try and decide. And poor Chris has just racked himself over this, it's been 6 months now trying to figure out what the hell, how it's going to work, because one person wants to go this way, one wants to go that way, and they're bartering for a really valuable piece of property, and it's just a nightmare for them to make it work out. Some people try their level best to keep the trading of life and living balanced. It's their entire cause of life is to make everything as fair as they possibly can make it. And I've lived with people that's the only thing that matters to them, is it's fair. It's just got to be fair. And I go, but there's very few things in life that are fair. I use this story often because we had such a crazy time with it. The university called, and through the university I got a call from the city of Calgary, Canada. They had a wine tasting toast something for Queen Elizabeth, and they needed glassware for every one of the guests to take home with them. So we put the Canadian maple leaf on it right there, and then Queen Elizabeth II, Her Royal Majesty, and then Libby donated the glassware. And as I recall, it was like 34 cases. It was 800. Remember, it was an 800-piece order to get done. And so I worked up a price, which was a perception of value. And this is a cool business to be in, because who's going to do this for them? They can't run over to any need store, Walmart, Kmart, and Costco, and get this done. No one else can do it for them. The glass is a need and is pretty well price fixed and got a range, but not what goes on there. And I've learned that people will pay some rather amazing numbers for the things they want done like this. That was for the city of Calgary, and they decided they had we'd made gorgeous little velvet bags for them so they could take them home after the party. They got to do the toast together, and then they got to take the glass home. So out there across this country, or across Canada, there's 800 pieces of glassware that we banged out. And they delayed the decision and delayed the decision and delayed the decision. They couldn't get anybody to make a decision. And it got closer and closer to train time. And so I started as a mechanism to shove them into doing it or not doing it, because they were leaving us very little time to get the job done. I started raising the price every time they'd call and change the circumstance, because at first it was too small, then they wanted bigger, then they wanted bigger. And every time you change things here, that really affects blasting as a whole. So I started raising the price on them dramatically. And I kept trying to drive them off, literally. And they just, no matter what I threw them out as a price, they didn't even blink. And they ended up shipping these cases. I think, didn't we ship them overnight, FedEx, overnight? It was a rush fee, I know, to Calgary, from Utah to Calgary, to get those there in time because they waited so damn long. And they paid a fortune just to get them there. 34 cases. About killed all these great, wonderful people that got involved and helped us off to get the job done. But we did make a delivery. And the whole idea is this trading thing. What changes? I'm trading this for X amount of dollars, but if you change the trade in the process, then that makes things change different in perception of value. And you have to learn that, and you have to learn when to play those cards. I call this the trade wins game, the game of trading. And there's 52 cards in the deck we're going to talk about, and we're gradually going to go through those 52 cards. And I'm going, well, so it's a game and a trading game, and you're going to go to Las Vegas and trade, but you don't know what the aces are. You have no idea how the cards are played, and you don't know the rules of the game. How are you going to do well? How could you possibly expect to end up with anything? And if you go to Vegas, you don't end up with anything, do you? They've got it all worked out to where you put more money into Vegas than you take out. I freaking guarantee it. And you have to learn that there's all kinds of opportunities laying all around you based on your ability to trade. Oh, this Wolf kid, I've forgotten his first name. Paul Wolf. Paul Wolf was a disabled veteran, started doing custom motorcycle engraving, and he was engraving at a Harley dealership, and this guy came up and he says, does this tool engrave on glass? And Paul says, yeah, as a matter of fact, it does. And he says, well, I own a dealership in Belgium, and I'd like you to come over and do a show for us and custom engrave, and I'll pay your way over for the show. Now, Paul didn't think too much about it, didn't put a lot of credit into it, because you hear all kinds of stuff when you're at an event from the motorcycle crowd, but all of a sudden here came 2 first-class tickets to Europe for him and his wife to go over and engrave for this dealership. Now, Paul is quite a savvy trader, and it's really fun to have watched that evolution between not having a name and reputation to ending up where he ended up. He's called the Yankee engraver, and he only works in Europe. Last I talked to him, he didn't even do anything in the U.S. anymore. It's all Europe. He's the Yankee engraver, and he says over there they want Harley Davidson on everything. Over here you'd get killed for doing that, but in Europe they don't care. And so I'd like you to stop right now for just a split second and try and see if you can tell yourself what you think your most important asset is. Number one asset of you as a person in the trading in the economy, what are you best at? If we lined up 10 people that knew you and we said, okay, tell Mel or tell Jay what they're good at, what you ought to do is this, this, or this, because you're good at this, this, and this. What do you think your most important asset is right now? Or one that you can kind of enhance and grow and play with. If you can't figure this out, how in the hell are you going to trade and control the trade? If you don't have a relative checklist of I'm good at this, 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 and a great deal of confidence in the fact that this is an asset for you personally. You're good at these things. What kind of possibility will you have you ever get to a point where you're actually controlling your own time? I was about 35 when Woody showed me that card. He said the number one card in the trading game of the economy is the control of your personal time. You get up every morning and you get to decide what you're going to do with that day. And people who don't have a business, the best 8 hours of the day goes to whoever's paying you that paycheck. And you get what's ever left over. And you work and say, well, what I got to do is have enough money to retire, enough money. And it never, ever quite gets there. And you finally retire, and you've been retired 6 weeks, and you die. You never, ever gain the control of your personal time. Now, this isn't everybody's #1 card, but it sure as hell is mine. And it's been that way that I've been aiming at it for an awfully long time. The show tonight's also dedicated to Sarah Raines because we blame her for all of the training, hands-on training at the company. Sarah bought her kit from me at some show in Texas and Dallas, and she started trying to teach herself and was having a tough time learning. So she called me one day. She said, "Doc, I'm coming to Utah. I need some training. I want to learn how to do this better, quicker." And so all of a sudden, she's on a plane coming here the next day. And Tammy and I called Keith and said, "Oh, my hell, Keith, he was our first pretty successful carver and engraver. We got to come up with a training class here pretty damn fast to help this woman learn." And so that kind of put things in motion in 1991, I think it was, for the Profitable Hobbies training, hands-on training programs. And Sarah's the one that kind of pushed the buttons to get this all started. She was really cute because she just had no hesitation. You talked things through with her and she would give it a go. Her way of getting started was a hospital gift. She did a baby bottle, glass baby bottle. She put a pink ribbon around the one baby bottle and a blue ribbon around the other baby bottle and slipped a card in the bottle that said this card's worth about $15 worth of free custom engraving, and I will put the name of the baby and the vital statistics and engrave it permanently on the bottle when the baby's born. Now, she sold it through the hospital gift shops, and as I recall, it was $7.50 for the bottle retail, wholesale, and then it retailed in the gift shops for $15. Now, if they never came and got the engraving, the bottle was $1, and she took it from $1 to $7.50 with just nothing more than the ribbon and sticking a card in there. And it got to be a really popular gift shop gift at hospital gift shops because those are pink ladies. They're not professional salespeople. They take it or they won't take it. And once it starts to be someone comes in to the hospital because it's a new baby, they walk in the gift shop and say, "What have you got for a baby gift?" And all that person had to do is say, "Look at this baby bottle we can put in the handwriting of mom, the name and the date, the vital statistics of the baby." This launched her whole enterprise. And over a couple of years, she began to do really high-end corporate personalized gift where I play, and she ended up doing engraving for custom crystal gifts for Ross Perot. And that kind of launched the whole deal for her. Rick Nichols lives in Prescott, Arizona now, and Rick got the Rolex engraving account when he lived in Riverside, California. And every Rolex that was sold that someone wanted their name or something engraved on it, Rick is the guy that did the work for him. So most of what I've talked about in webinars since January is focused. Relative sense of value, because it's all perception, and target the efforts. You literally focus your efforts rather than all over the place. What you're trying to do is create a sense of value around one concept and see if you can push it home. Now, I went with the things that, to begin with, the things that I did a lot with. I'm a Boy Scout nut, and these are 5 drawings that Baden Powell drew himself, the founder of Scouting. And I found those drawings. And then this is the last paragraph of the last letter he ever sent to Boy Scouts worldwide. And that little sign right there means going home. And he died shortly after this. And so I put the name of the person that's getting the award up here and why they were getting the award. And then we had, Craig used to make these wooden plates just for custom engraving. And then I gave them away because I was the council chairman. I had 55,000 Boy Scouts and 18,000 adult leaders. And so every chance I got, someone got one of these things. But these are beautiful. This isn't a 2-bit piece of plastic. This is a thank you that's really cool. And it started to have a bit of a buzz in the council to where people started calling and saying, "I want to get one of those. We got a scoutmaster that really needs one of those carvings, those engravings of yours." So then I gave that business over to Christopher at age 16, and he started engraving these for the National Boy Scout Council in Dallas. But I just stayed right within the business relationship, social relationship that I had spent, literally been in scouting for 50 years. So when you work with those circles, these long, deep, really lasting values are things that you begin to sense. Because there's 75 million Boy Scouters out there who participate with scouting and really value the program. The instant they see this silhouette, they know exactly what that is. And they know what the eagle represents. This is one of Keith Holmes' carvings, by the way. And when you can do this kind of stuff, and I would have these already done, and then we'd put the name of the scout here and the date he got his Eagle Scout, and this was an Eagle Scout Award. That's what was the quote we put on there. I've forgotten. It was, "A boy is the only thing God can make, has to make a man." And in the process of finding this that worked, and this that worked, and this that worked, and then we called ourselves a network, but we didn't even have a name. We didn't. It just was end users. And we began to hang out with each other and pal around. Most in the network are extremely likable and enjoyable because we're all like-minded. I'm the only one that's questionable in that mixture. But every time we share something we've learned how to do, it opens doors usually for somebody else. I walked right past this rock. I blasted this for Jacob years ago, and it's sitting in his entranceway of his home today. In matters of principle, stand like a rock. And I can bang this out on a river rock. That rock was free. All I had to do was go find it, pick it up, bring it home, put a stencil, burn a pattern, put a stencil on there, and sandblast that on. If I had an hour's worth of work in that whole project, I'd be really surprised. And yet, who else can do that for Mr. Solomon? Very few other people. And every time someone's in and out of his life, he points it out. But I did the same thing with my motto. My lifetime motto is having a good time is my job, and I've used it, used it, used it, used it. But these are the things that I concentrate on. This is what helps me with my trading. A lot of the things in my life are not very defined, but a lot of things are. And every time there's a price tag attached to it, I spend all of my time trying to define the value. It's what Tammy wrestles with the most, is what things cost as opposed to what is the perception of value. When we started, we had the only drill out there. Now there's all kinds of drills and all kinds of kits and all kinds of offers. But for somebody to figure out what you're doing and try and keep it, if you're not the one adding things up and keeping the score, how the hell do you expect it to be balanced? This is my brother. And Doug and I are both dentists, and we used to call it the Jensen Brothers Drilling Company. Vernal is the energy development drilling capital of Western United States, and so everybody there is from Texas drilling oil and gas. So we just called ourselves a Jensen Brothers Drilling Company. At Chamber of Commerce, it was always really funny because invariably they'd introduce us as, and then somebody that didn't know we were dentists would always say, "Well, what kind of rigs have you got?" And we had our shirts embroidered with it. It was just damn much fun. And in between your family, this is our mom before she passed away, and we were down to our Aunt Mary's funeral, and this is actually was in the city, Manti, Utah, where I was born. And you'll have amongst your family and friends a degree of reputation for what kind of trader you are. And most are kind of uncomfortable if they have a bit of a firm image of trading. That as we trade, there's not a tremendous amount of flexibility for it. And if you're not the kind of person that doesn't pay attention to this sociological trading thing, you trade out of the goodness of your human nature, you will most often be taken advantage of. Most often. especially by those who are better at the trading issues. And I think it's because you just don't even pay any attention to it. Because right here is where the trading happens the most. And if you're not able to control that, God, you get yourself in a pickle. I found this years ago. It was published by Steve Covey's organization in a book that they published. And Roger's a filmmaker in Utah, quite a name and reputation. And this was in that book. And Covey had rewritten it and promoted it as a way of describing this photographer's attitude about his work and his art. And it hit me so hard that I said, that's going into my life. Early in my career, I came across the words of John Muir, the father of our nation's national parks. I love nature, but my vision of the wilderness was not near what his ecstatic level was. So I walked in his footsteps for a year and a half, and it changed my entire soul. The first thing I discovered was that it was my eyes that were clouded, and that nature and life really were just as beautiful as Muir had described, if I was only open enough to see it. The second thing I discovered was Muir himself. There was a man who walked into nature, saw its beauty, and let it fill him up. It overflowed in him, and it came out in everything he did, in the way he hiked in the mountains, in his political activism, in his writing, and in his business. It came out of his entire life. Muir was a man who made his life his art, and that was a staggering concept for me. Making my life my art became the corner vision of my creative vision. The cornerstone of my creative vision. And when I read that, I went, God, that's pretty good stuff. I was so hell-bent on moving from a dentistry of a world of things that people need to something that I enjoyed more. I just hated my life as a dentist. It was miserable. After 13 years of hurting people every stupid day, I got so tired of that. I'm going, you know what? If your life sucks, there's only one human being that's going to fix it and change it for you. That is just, there's no other way. And unless you start building a cornerstone of your vision and the direction that you're going to take your life, and you see that and begin to collect that. That's why this personal journal thing, it's everybody's waking up to the fact that if you collect the things that interest you off your Google Plus stream, eventually put it into your digital journal, eventually it's going to start rubbing off on you. If you see it once and that's it, you plus one it and go on your way, it almost doesn't do any good. It hits you at the moment and that's it. But if you move it over to your personal journal and then begin to work with it thoughtfully and say, how can this concept help me affect my trading? What I'm trading for, these precious breaths you have left. How many days have you got left? I've lived about 25,000 days now. And if the average expectancy is 77, I only got 7 years left. But I might not make it that long. Just lately, we've had some really close friends die. And night before last, I heard Dave Ramsey talking to a lady on the radio show. She's 42 and she's dying. In 6 months, she's going to be gone, and she's trying to figure out how to manage all her finances so her kids can manage and go forward. And she was asking Dave whether she'd sell her home and move into an apartment and clear all her debt, or whether she should stay in the home that they'd all grown up with and let the family kind of wrestle it out after she was gone. It was an interesting phone call. I just could not believe what I was hearing. But 42, how do you tell somebody that they're only going to make it to 42 and that's it? How many of us are my age and just looking at, crap, I didn't ever think I'd be this old. My grandson, we went to lunch a couple of days ago. He's 21, and that's the Olympic gymnast kid that outgrew his ability to be a gymnast. And
He's so damn enamored with Grandpa's new idea. He is just so cranked because he's convinced that it will work this time, and we got something dramatic to work on. And when you can kind of have this in your life to say, you know what, the more you can realize making your life your art. This isn't just a Roger Merrill thing. This is what I think everyone should be looking at. Everyone should begin to pay attention to this trading game and learn more about how the damn game works. I spent a lot of time putting these cards together. And they're all in my book, my 7 steps. Opportunity intersection. These 52 are chapter, step 4. Every one of them are there, and we talk about them because you've got to do, if you're going to do well in business and trading, you better know what these cards mean and understand how does that begin to affect your overall trading ability. If you've been in business for a while, there's not a single thing here you won't understand. Okay, you will have figured it out. Tammy knows what cash flow means. Okay, it's just huge. It's the one thing that cripples and destroys most businesses, cash flow. Because if you have cash flow, you're fine. If you don't have cash flow, you die, especially to the degree you have fixed overhead and fixed expenses. So working out of your home, working out of your studio is the smartest way to start a business there is, because you reduce those fixed costs. And so whatever cash flow you have works better. The second leading cause of small business failure is inventory control. You don't even understand that you can't just buy it because it's on sale. You buy something inventory wholesale and it sits in your garage for the next 17 years is the worst damn that. You might as well take money and burn it up. And then this one's so fun. When I discovered that I could share instead of sell. In the need world, you have to learn to sell. That means you're talking somebody into something they don't really want to buy. It's a need, and no one likes spending money on things they need. So there, over here in the want world, all we got to do is enthusiastically share and have a degree of sophistication of the trade and know how to close. And this one you all know now, fishing on a higher plane. You're looking and focusing your efforts on a higher plane. Every one of these, specialize is an ace. You just can't not play the game here and know not these categories and understand cost versus value. Every person in the world knows the price of damn near everything and the value of nothing. It's just price. The bottom half of the economy, the only thing that matters to them is price. It's the number one thing they'll ask you for. We'll talk about how much is it? How much is it? How much is it? Because all they do every week, every month is decide, can I afford it? And if it's financed, all they have to do is look, yeah, I can afford that payment. They don't even think about cost versus value. But as a producer, this is huge. You have to know the difference between what something costs as opposed to what will make it work or not make it work. So as we go down through these now, we'll talk about some of them, and I'll bring them up in the next few series to have you realize that everything here has a long-term impact of anybody that's in business. If you're in business and you don't understand how this stuff works, you're not likely to succeed. And you can't just say, "Oh yeah, I've been a human being my whole life. I've gone in and got gas, so I know. Therefore, I've gone in and bought gas and paid with a credit card for umpteen years. I know what it's like to own a gas station." And that's my favorite example, because how in the hell can you say that if you've never actually done it? If most of your income is from a job, guess what? There's this whole huge world that you do not know. And of course, the last one's third to last, be patient with yourself. The give back factor, the thank you business. How many of you saw Google Plus today? It was the Thank You Thursday Thank you Thursday. And I thought, oh, I like that. That's just way cool. We could pop that button. Because I try to do Friday as TGIF, Good American Idea Factory, to start moving into your playful part of your week and try to come up with new ideas. And then the last one is everything in your life is a constant trade. Just no way around it. This is a quote by Marion Taylor that I have engraved so many times I can't even count it. Youth and age are not dates in time, but states of mind. Our duty is not to add years to our lives, but to add life to our years. Time will wrinkle the skin, and worry, doubt, hate, and the loss of ideals wrinkle the soul. Fears, not years, bow the head. Is that not true? It's our fears that unravel us. Whether we're 70 or 17, a sense of wonder in life keeps us young. Now, I can't tell you how many times I've given this away. I would have occasion where there was a circumstance where someone's being recognized or whatever, and I would do a separate engraving. I usually sandblast it, but I have engraved it in hand before. And I give it to them. And you just level people. You take a quote like this and put it on something, and that's your gift. This is a deadly, deadly quote. The older you get, the more impact it has on other people. And I then get to talk about what I do. And it was a freebie. It's the best, one of the best PR moves that I ever made in my life. Send me an email and I'll, or email Tammy and I'll let you get you that quote, okay? All righty. I hope we got through some things that help make some sense for you. There's a lot to this subject, as with most of the subjects that we tackle in gatherings. And so anybody got any questions or comments they want to? It's such an important subject. Tab, what do you think, lady?
I think it's excellent. I know for a fact, because I've been here for so many years, it's taken you a lot to put this together. I remember you teaching this in your week-long class, and I kept saying, you gotta put this down. You gotta do something with it, because this is such fun.
Well, where else do you learn it? I mean, who teaches you this kind of stuff?
Is that how long I've been around? How long have I heard this? How long have I...
No, we don't want to talk about that. We don't.
Okay, okay. But I learn, and I remember, and I keep thinking, oh yeah, this really something that is really important to keep. I wish I had a board with all of this. You know, Craig, when he gets in his classes, writes down all the concept and all the things that you need to learn in your art. But this is just as important to learn this with your art.
It's in step 4. There's 7 books, and it's in step 4 is these 52 cards. And there's a DVD to go with it. And I'm sorry, but it's $20 for the book and the DVD, and Tammy can get it for you. And you can start. I mean, honestly, it's the trading game. And you're going to go to Las Vegas and trade your hard-earned dollars with Vegas, and you don't even know what cards are the aces? It just doesn't make any sense at all, and yet that's how most people go at it. Lance?
Well, you beat me to it. I was going to say not to necessarily push a book in any way, shape, or form. It's just you can't be without it. That that opportunity intersection. You got to have it. You got to have that written down in front of you so you can continue to refer to it. And you got to have it.
How to go from where you are to where you want to go, right?
There's too much right with a couple of slides or 3 slides for you to just take a quick screenshot. That's not enough. And even if you sit through the whole several weeks of this, you still got to have a reference. You got to have reference.
Till you can make it rub off, till it begins to affect your thinking. Inventory control. Most of you have never faced inventory control yet. You haven't.
Tammy faces it continuously. She has to, every time you buy, it's an issue, isn't it, Tam?
It's a huge issue.
There you go.
The other thing is that you were talking about cash flow.
Yeah.
Oh, holy smokes. Oh, holy smokes. Yeah.
There's a T-shirt out there, guys, that says "Cash flow is king," and only business owners wear it because no one else understands.
Well,
what
I
the hell
need
it
one.
means.
I don't have one. That's a John Bryan
It is,
thing. Yeah.
That's Nancy Bryant's husband, John, was just fierce. He knew business extremely well, and yeah, cash flow is king. It's the 900-pound gorilla in the room.
That's
Cash
for
flow
sure.
is it. You either manage the cash flow or you die. That's basically the only options.
Cash
That's
flows
true.
in one pocket, not the other.
What, Mel?
The cash flows in one pocket and out the other.
Actually, Jack brought that up today. He says the ideal business is an extremely good-looking babe that puts the money in the bank, and that's all there is to business. Nothing goes out, just money goes in. And he said that's the perfect business. And I thought, well, that's the model of it, but I don't see very many people ever figure out how to get to it. There's always been a hole in my pocket somewhere.
You got to get married to a gal that can squeeze a buffalo nickel and make a crap 2 dimes.
That's one I've not heard before in my entire life. That's pretty cute. So you learn to get along with somebody that control the money, then then you'll have something in the end of your life. Is that how that is?
Yeah, on occasion.
Something like that. Ron's on tonight from Florida. Ron, you've been in business a long time too, and you've sold for years. Is there anything tonight that you question that I've started to resent? I mean, you know how trading works as well as anybody I've played with, Ron. You really have a sense of how do you explain perception of value. Because if you don't know how to lay it down to make it sound like it's reasonable for the price tag, nothing's going to happen. So how do you do it?
Well, on one of the slides you had there, you talked about sharing and not selling, and that's the way I found to convey the value of something is to share with the people, not try to force it down their throats.
Yeah.
And when you can share the information, and the other thing is listen to what they're trying to tell you instead of trying to sell them something. Sit back and listen to what they're saying. You're going to get a whole lot farther than if you try to say, okay, now I covered that point, okay, they should be right here, they should be ready to sign on the dotted line. That's not the case, and people want to be listened to. They want to be nurtured, they want to be petted, they want to be pat on the back, and they also want to learn something. And the biggest time that I learned this was when I was working at the woodworking shows, and that's when it hit me that I was doing what I was doing because I was sharing, I wasn't selling.
Yeah. Enthusiastic sharing is the secret of all the want world.
That's when it comes into being passionate and loving what you do.
That shows, doesn't it?
Yeah, very much so.
How can you hide that when you're enthusiastic with what you've done and what you're playing with? Let me show you this, guys. I spent some time. Jack's going to have me do some crystal for him, some more. And I just got this in. This is a piece. I don't know if I've showed you this yet, but this is a crystal piece shaped like a mountain. And can you see how thick it is? It's really a good crystal block. And we're going to etch BYU's logo right here because here up on the mountainside, they've got the Y. and the new president of the university wants a gift that he can hand out quick, we'll have them already done, and then I can personalize them if he wants, or just have them in his office and he can say, here, this is from me. So this is starting to brew into a really, really good order. I'm cranked about that one. And then I delivered the 14 pieces to the university. We're going to double check them again one more time. Monday they go to China next Thursday. And all five of the pieces are going to the top Chinese politicians, or whatever they call them, in China. And then the U.S. ambassador is getting one of them. And then this one is a small version of that piece. This one is a little piece that's got, they got this really nice beveled edge here. Can you see that well enough to know? And I pulled them out and showed them to Jack, because he's got, the governor's coming to see his collection on the 3rd of June, and so he needs a special gift for all these top people are coming at him now to look at the collection. And I told him, I said, well, oh, where's that big one, I guess? Oh, it's right here. And so then he started to talk about price tag. And we'd kind of gotten to the point of, okay, how much is this one costing? How much is this costing? he says, so how much are you going to charge your old friend? And I just very quickly, I just said double. And I've learned to leave things like that a little open-ended, because you don't know yet how much he wants or how many he wants. And I'm sitting right over his collection, where the average piece downstairs is 10 or 12 or 15,000 pieces. And mine are, these pieces are several $100s usually. So I pulled this one out and I held it up in front of the light. We were sitting at his kitchen table, and the light caught all these bevels, and they're prisms. They're prisms, and this silly piece looks like $1 million when it's etched. I put something here or something here on the front, and then there's this presentation site here where you can put a name or a comment. And so the perception, and I teach them not to ever just present this in the box. This is the presentation box that it comes in. But if you don't get it out and present it out and catch the light, you're missing half the zing, half the hammer of why even bother to do this. Instead of a 2-bit piece of plastic, let's go to these custom individual crystal pieces. And I played here now. Tammy knows how much I've done over the years, and it's just an absolute one of the best little playgrounds on the freaking planet, because the whole top end of the economy should pay more attention to the trading process in their life. If you've got a business client that's making you $1 million a year, how careful with that account do you think you ought to be? And around you are, yeah, Mel. Mel's got it. It doesn't matter. No, then big deal. Somebody can steal that $1 million account from you in a week and a half, and that's not smart. So that paying attention to the thank you business of the well-off crowd is kind of my #1 niche. It's what I enjoy doing the most, and it's extremely productive for the time. I did that $2,800 in about a day and a half of work. And when you can kind of see that kind of potential, and it just leads from one to the next, and it's all relationship marketing. I've been talking and teaching relationship marketing for 30 freaking years, and all of a sudden now social media has finally woke up and go, oh God, it's all relationship marketing. What we got to do is pay attention to relationship marketing. Okay, let's go ahead and run with it. At least you're finally figuring it out for teams. So thanks for the PR tonight, Lance. I appreciate the plug. We got to pay the damn bills. So if you haven't got your business plan done, don't rely on your own judgment to pull off a business plan off the internet and say, okay, that's what Lou's talking about. because every business plan you'll find in the economy is for needs. And you don't trade and market things that people want the same way as you do needs. And there's nothing like it. I'm going to brag about it till my last breath. It took me 10 years to put that book together and do those videos. And the 7 videos will introduce you to the concepts and try and teach you what are these 52 steps and how do I make a business plan, and then, God, Lord, how do I actually use it?
Lou?
Yeah, Nick.
What you ought to do.
Okay. Bingo.
I think you need maybe a step up in presentation cases.
Okay.
Right? Nice wood cases.
A really good case? Well, that's a good idea. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. A really good, nice wood box to put in there.
You know, you talk about the crystal, and the crystal is just gorgeous.
Yeah, it is.
But
the presentation box is also huge. Good idea. That is a good idea, Nick. Now, those kind of moments, see, we talk about that what you ought to do moment all the time because it comes from someone else's observation of your circumstance. And it will come to you every time like that. Someone will say, oh, what you ought to do is this or this or this. And then you either ignore it or you take advantage of it. And we can engrave their name on the box as it went out the door.
You can
decorate the box.
Yeah.
And placed LED lighting inside, maybe?
Maybe. But some exotic stuff. I mean, I do. It's a set that I think is so important in the process of succeeding, because if you don't have a plan of action, the odds of succeeding, I think, go clear through the floor. And it's all about odds. Woody and Jack measure everything. The bet they make is whether it will likely work or not. Is it worth the investment in time and money, and have it work? So Woody was always got to stack the damn deck. That means you don't know anything. If you don't stack the deck, you don't know anything. And then you go into the trade completely unprepared. The odds are the trade's not going to go like you want it to. And guess who gets screwed to the wall? The producer. And you don't understand that process. So I think this next couple of shows are going to be really valuable, really helpful to you. Appreciate you coming. Huh? Lance, you got yours there, have you, Lance? What do you got?
Lance's
screen. Get that mic on, Lance.
You were talking about presentation boxes. I was trying to figure out a way to show 1911 grips that that I carved out of bone, and I found
the pen
real
box.
Nice pen box that's got you know, velvet, and that jumps it up another notch, you know, because I can just set it right like this, right up there on a table, and it looks like $1 million compared to somebody's got it wrapped in a little bit of plastic or just laying there.
Yeah.
So yeah, perfect. Presentation boxes, if you can
that
find
is
them.
Perfect. Yeah. One of my great examples in trading is a story I used to use in my scout classes I teach. If you say to someone, do you want a piece of this cake? Got a beautiful cake sitting there, frosted and ready to go. And you say, do you want a piece of cake? And they say yes. So you grab a handful and say, here. Now, if you can't sense that moment and how poorly, who in the hell is going to want, I don't care how beautiful that cake is, you grab a handful of it and say, here, the trade is not going to happen. And yet, often that's how we present ourselves, just that inept. We just come across so badly in the moment. And I think we're all vulnerable to it. We're not paying it. We're busy. We're just going down the freeway of life and not paying a lot of attention. And all of a sudden, bam, the moment happens, and you've lost that 11 seconds, that 11-second opinion of the perception of you and your work. It's kind of shot. And then you got to go start fishing all over again. So there's a lot here, and I'm hoping that that will end up. I didn't eating all day long, guys, and I'm freaking hungry. And I got here so late I couldn't even get anything. I came and sacrificed my body.
But you can't afford this.
You can't. I bet you can't afford that. That's what we said to the lady that was over at Craig's. Al Holm walked in Saturday to Tammy's retreat, and Tammy had a guest there and was teaching her, and she said, "Oh, I just love to have you make a table for me." A custom table. As soon as she found out he did custom furniture, and I told her, I says, "I don't think you can afford Al's work." And all it did was whet her appetite even more. So we'll see. We'll see. Al knew how to fish for it. He stayed right with it till we can sort out whether she's going to have him do a cabinet or not. And I got to tell her his last cabinet tabletop was 85 grand. So maybe
Hey,
she's a lot more money, Tam, than we know. How do you think?
Lou,
Yeah. No.
the last Christmas show,
Yeah.
when I sold the Steeds of Lear, which is a stainless steel cuff bracelet that had 2 seahorses silver soldered to it, and a blue star sapphire set in a cabochon setting. Had a $450 price tag on it.
Yeah.
And this gentleman, he came up every which way but loose trying to get me to discount it. But no, that's my price. No discounts. But what I did for him was I went against my better judgment, and it worked out okay. So I took 2 post-dated checks. Technically, there's no such thing.
Yeah. That's a little risky. Yeah.
But I held on to them for the agreed time and cashed them in sequence, and they cleared. And I let them. I let them go.
You have a good story to tell because it worked out instead of all of my stories that are bad because they didn't work out.
Well, yeah, it worked out.
I got more bad stories. That'd be good.
And I told him, look, I know where you live. They better not bounce.
How many of you know enough about Mel Jones you wouldn't really want to screw him over? Anybody here figured that out yet in all the years we've known Mel? It's probably the last guy you want to have hunting you down saying your check didn't clear. Now what do we do?
Especially with satellite imagery. I can find you.
I was going to say it's even easier now that he has a dog that can find you.
Yep, he's even got that too. Put the scent on you, and you're in nothing but trouble.
But
I hope that all of you, if there's something more that is an issue that all I've done is usually in this first show is just dig up a whole lot more questions. Yeah. But if there's something I can address that will somehow move you in this trading direction, because what we've started with was the pricing series, how to price things, this want world, and then we talked about upscale marketing, and then we talked about personal branding, and now we're going to talk about the trading mechanism. This is a series of information. If you're going to head into business and you're poor at that side, you're going to struggle all the time. You have to get better at the trading game. How in the hell do I make it worth my time? Instead of pricing it down, I remember watching a guy that had a scroll saw display in Vernal one time. And he'd driven from Nevada clear to Vernal to do this 2-bit little gift craft show on the lawn of the library. And I don't know who talked him into doing that. I mean, just the costs alone were just astronomical. And he had all this scroll saw stuff out, Ron, the kind of stuff that you see all the time. And God, the prices were giveaway. Yeah, I know how much time it takes to make some of that stuff. And I know the cost of the materials. And the price tags were, if he made $1 an hour, I'd be surprised. And I says, how come you've priced it this way? And he said to me, he says, I don't know how to price it.
put a price tag on. And he says, and then as the weekend goes, I drop the prices a little more so I can make enough money to get enough gas to go home.
He diminishes the perception of value.
God, he's just killing himself. He doesn't have a freaking clue about the trading process, and yet he's there trying and losing money. There's no way he could pay the bills the way he was doing things. And I could have figured that out in 5 seconds, and he'd been doing it for a couple of years and hadn't figured it out.
Did you take him under your wing?
No, and I kind of test the water a little there. I do just like Woody Searle and Jack do now. I'll offer some advice and give them a connection, but if they don't take the advice and take the connection, then not much I can do.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how I've handled it over the years. If you'll make the investment in your life, then I'll try and help you. So with Tammy, that's how the company's navigated. You can't do that, even that, for free. And when someone says, well, all Lutz June is trying to make money, I'm going, damn right. I've had to pay a lot of bills to get out into the economy and do that trading process. And if you're not making money doing it, you don't have a net profit, you're not going to be around very long. Business has to have a net profit in order to survive. And all of you who've had your enterprise for a little while know that is the truth. The only way it works. All right, gang. You can sit and visit a little more if you want. I'll catch you next week. We'll try and have it on Wednesday night.
Turn the live off.
Do the lab.